The breaking point, what happens when the person you care for most silently carries a pain you never notice. Claire woke to a quiet house, the morning sun streaming through the blinds, casting soft shadows across the kitchen. She had grown used to these quiet mornings while Ethan, her husband, traveled for work. But today felt different. Something in the air was heavy, almost electric, like the calm before a storm. She poured herself a cup of coffee and listened. The usual sounds of breakfast, the clinking of cereal bowls, laughter, the hum of cartoons, were missing. Could a few simple words expose months of hidden pain? Daniel, her 17-year-old stepson, was sitting at the kitchen table, elbows on the surface, head resting in his hands. He rarely looked so serious. Normally, he complained about school or his phone, but now there was a stillness in him that Claire hadn't seen before. His silence was louder than any argument. She set down her mug and approached him. "Daniel, are you okay?" she asked softly. Her voice was calm but carried an undercurrent of worry. He lifted his head slowly. His eyes were glossy, and the faint tremor in his voice made Claire's stomach twist. "I can't take it anymore," he said. The words hit her like a punch. She froze. It was just a short sentence, but it carried a weight she wasn't prepared for. She felt a wave of guilt, realizing she had been so focused on managing the household, the younger kids, and her own life that she hadn't truly noticed Daniel's growing frustration. What had she missed while trying to keep everything together? Claire sat down across from him, careful to meet his gaze without pushing too hard. She wanted to understand, to reach him, but she also knew that forcing him to speak could make him retreat further. "Tell me what's going on," she said gently. Daniel took a deep breath and started speaking, his voice shaky at first. He talked about how lonely he felt with his father away most of the time. He described feeling invisible, how his achievements, his struggles, even his moods were often overlooked. Claire listened intently, every word tugging at her heart. She realized the emotional distance she had assumed was normal was actually a chasm that had grown over months. Could she rebuild the bridge before it was too late? As Daniel continued, he admitted he had felt anger and confusion building inside him. He was frustrated by the lack of attention and support, the absence of guidance in matters that mattered to him. Claire was struck by the raw honesty. Her stepson's words were not just complaints, they were a plea for recognition, love, and care. She leaned forward, placing a hand over his, a small gesture to show she was there, present and willing to listen. Daniel flinched slightly, but then his hand stayed. Claire's heart softened. She realized that this moment, though painful, was also an opportunity, a chance to reconnect, to be the adult who could guide him through this storm. How could one conversation change the course of their relationship? But before she could respond further, Daniel paused and glanced toward the living room. Claire noticed the hesitation, the unspoken weight he was carrying beyond what he had just shared. Her instincts told her that there was more, something deeper that he was holding back. Perhaps it was something about his father, something about their family's secrets. She felt the tension rise in her chest. The phone buzzed on the counter, snapping her attention. It was a message from Ethan, his flight delayed again. Claire's shoulders sagged. She knew that for the next few weeks, she would have to be not only the mother but the emotional anchor for Daniel, guiding him through his own storm while navigating the absence of her husband. Could she be the support he desperately needed without losing herself in the process? Daniel's eyes met hers again, filled with a mixture of hope and fear. He wanted answers, reassurance, and someone to stand beside him. Claire realized that this was more than a fleeting teenage moment. It was a turning point. How she responded would shape not only her relationship with Daniel but the emotional health of their entire household. Would Daniel reveal the full depth of his struggles, or would the silence grow too heavy, leaving them both adrift? What if the person you trusted most was carrying a secret that could change everything? The air in the house felt heavier that afternoon. Claire had tried to go about her routine, making lunch and tidying up, but her mind kept returning to Daniel's words. His simple statement, "I can't take it anymore," kept echoing in her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more he wasn't saying. Something deeper, something that had been brewing silently for months. Could she uncover the truth without shattering the fragile bond they were rebuilding? After lunch, Claire found Daniel sitting in the living room, his laptop open but untouched. He was staring out the window, lost in thought. She gently approached, kneeling beside him on the couch. "Daniel, I know there's more you're holding back," she said softly. "You don't have to face it alone." He looked at her, eyes wide with hesitation. His fingers fidgeted with the edge of his sleeve. "Mom. I don't know if I should say it," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Claire took a deep breath and let silence fill the room, giving him the space to continue. What was he about to confess that could shake their family to its core? Finally, Daniel spoke. He revealed that he had noticed changes in his father's behavior over the past months: distant phone calls, secretive messages, late nights at work that didn't add up. He had sensed tension and disconnect, and it was affecting him more than he could put into words. Claire's heart sank. She had suspected some distance, but hearing it through Daniel's perspective made it real in a way that shook her deeply. She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you for trusting me with this," she said. "We'll figure this out together." Her mind raced. If Ethan was hiding something, what did that mean for their family? Could a father's secret destroy the trust they had fought to maintain? As the day progressed, Claire noticed subtle signs confirming Daniel's fears. A message left open on Ethan's laptop. A hastily deleted browser history. Late-night calls he tried to hide. The pieces were there, forming a puzzle Claire had hoped never existed. She felt a mix of anger, sadness, and fear, knowing that the family she relied on was not as solid as she had believed. Would facing the truth bring them closer, or tear them apart? Daniel, sensing his mother's distress, tried to reassure her. I don't want to lose you too," he said. His words hit Claire harder than anything else. She realized that while she had been focused on Ethan's absence, she had overlooked Daniel's need for guidance, for honesty, for connection. She vowed silently to protect him, to be the anchor he needed while navigating the storm that seemed to be approaching. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about small things, the mundane details of school, homework, friends, but every sentence was underlined with unspoken tension. Claire could see Daniel's mind drifting back to the worries he hadn't yet voiced. She knew that soon, the conversation would have to confront the reality he was hinting at. Could she prepare herself for the moment when all truths came to light? As evening fell, Claire decided to confront the situation head-on. She picked up her phone and sent a tentative message to Ethan, careful not to accuse but to open a dialogue. "We need to talk. Daniel is struggling, and I think we need to address some things together." She didn't know how he would respond. She didn't know if he would admit anything or retreat further into secrecy. Meanwhile, Daniel retreated to his room, pacing. His emotions were turbulent: fear, anger, sadness, and relief all mixed together. He had finally told his mother what he had been holding in for months, but now he feared the consequences. What if revealing the truth made things worse? What if it destroyed what little stability remained? Minnie Hook, would honesty heal the wounds, or open a door that could never be closed? The evening passed with a heavy tension. Ethan's reply finally arrived late at night, short, vague, and unsatisfying. "We'll talk tomorrow." Claire sighed, frustration and anxiety coiling inside her. She knew tomorrow could change everything. She knew that the next conversation could either begin healing or trigger a fracture in their fragile family bond. Daniel, lying in bed, stared at the ceiling. His mind replayed the day's confessions, the pieces he had noticed, and the reactions of his mother. For the first time, he realized how much power words and honesty held. He also understood the vulnerability in sharing secrets, even with someone you loved deeply. Could tomorrow's confrontation provide clarity, or deepen the rift beyond repair? As Claire lay beside him, she held his hand and whispered reassurance. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what Ethan would reveal or how the family would survive the storm that seemed inevitable. But she knew one thing: she had Daniel's trust now, and that trust was the first step toward navigating the challenges ahead. Would Daniel's courage to speak out force Ethan to confront his actions, or would silence protect the secrets that threaten to unravel everything? What happens when the truth you've been avoiding suddenly demands to be faced? The next morning, Claire woke early, the weight of the previous day still pressing on her chest. She felt Daniel's anxious eyes on her as he moved around the kitchen, making breakfast in an unusually quiet manner. Something had shifted overnight, an unspoken tension lingered in the air, thick and heavy, hinting that today could change everything. Could a single conversation unravel months of secrecy? Claire tried to stay composed. She poured coffee, set the table, and waited for Ethan to come down. Every creak of the stairs made her heart skip a beat. When he finally appeared, his expression was neutral, almost unreadable, but Claire noticed the subtle signs, the tightness around his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands, that betrayed the storm brewing beneath the surface, behind silence. "Good morning," Claire said softly, keeping her voice steady. Ethan nodded, barely meeting her gaze. Daniel hesitated, standing beside her, clearly nervous about the confrontation to come. Claire reached for his hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. She didn't need words, the gesture alone reminded him that he wasn't alone in this. The conversation started cautiously, small talk masking the tension, but it didn't take long for the silence to crack. Claire's voice grew firmer as she spoke. "Daniel told me what he's noticed, and I think it's time we address it openly. There's no reason to keep secrets from each other anymore." Could honesty finally break the barrier between them? Ethan's face shifted subtly. He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully, then sat down, inviting both Claire and Daniel to do the same. The room seemed smaller now, the walls closing in as unspoken truths demanded attention. Claire watched Daniel carefully, noting the mixture of hope and fear in his eyes. He wanted answers, but he also feared them. Would the answers bring healing, or more pain? Ethan began slowly, explaining the pressures he had faced at work, the temptations and frustrations he had tried to manage, and the distance that had grown between him and Claire. He admitted the mistakes he had made, carefully omitting details that weren't necessary to the conversation but acknowledging the impact on their family. Claire listened intently, her emotions swinging between anger, sorrow, and the faintest glimmer of understanding. Daniel, though still anxious, felt a strange relief. The tension he had carried for months was finally being acknowledged. The weight on his shoulders lessened slightly, replaced by a cautious optimism that perhaps this confrontation could help them heal. Could a father's confession be the bridge to repair a family, or a trigger for collapse? Claire pressed on gently, guiding the conversation. She asked questions, seeking clarity, not confrontation. Each answer revealed more layers of struggle and remorse, but also showed Ethan's willingness to take responsibility. It was not the whole truth, there were still shadows, but it was enough to spark a shift in the dynamic that had felt frozen for so long. Would this fragile honesty be enough to restore trust? As the morning turned to afternoon, Daniel grew more comfortable, adding his observations and feelings to the conversation. He spoke of the loneliness he had felt, the worry he carried for both parents, and the confusion that had clouded his young mind. Claire encouraged him to be honest, to express the emotions he had bottled up. The room, once heavy with tension, began to feel alive with communication, a cautious thread of connection weaving through their shared pain. Could a family begin to heal with words alone? By evening, the atmosphere had shifted. Ethan was quieter now, more reflective, and Claire could see that he was absorbing the consequences of his actions. Daniel, while still cautious, had a spark of relief and empowerment in his eyes. The process was far from over, but the first cracks of honesty had formed. For the first time in months, they all felt the possibility of moving forward. Would tomorrow bring reconciliation, or a deeper fracture? Just as they were about to end the conversation, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Claire froze. Ethan looked puzzled. Daniel peeked through the window, curiosity mixed with anxiety. None of them expected visitors at this hour. The unexpected interruption left the family in suspended uncertainty, the fragile progress hanging by a thread. Who was at the door, and would their arrival help heal the family, or shatter the fragile trust they had just begun to rebuild? Can a single choice change the course of an entire family's future? Claire's hand trembled slightly as she approached the door. Her heart raced with anticipation, unsure whether to expect someone bringing comfort or chaos. She hesitated before turning the handle, and when the door swung open, the face staring back at her was unexpected, a longtime family friend she hadn't seen in years, carrying a sense of calm authority that instantly shifted the room's energy. Could this visit be the answer they didn't know they needed? "Hi, Claire," the friend said softly, smiling warmly. "I thought I'd check in. I heard things were complicated." Claire swallowed hard, unsure if she was ready for another layer of confrontation, but something in the friend's tone suggested support, not judgment. Ethan and Daniel exchanged glances, curiosity mixing with unease. Would an outside perspective help, or disrupt the fragile progress? The visitor stepped inside, offering a reassuring presence. Conversation flowed naturally at first, light and friendly, but slowly shifted into more meaningful territory. Claire felt a surge of relief as she realized that having someone neutral could help them articulate emotions they hadn't been able to express to each other. Ethan seemed to relax as well, sensing the absence of accusation, replaced instead by genuine concern. Could honesty be easier when guided by empathy? Daniel, though shy, found courage in the room's warmth. He described the weeks of tension, his worry about his parents, and the loneliness he had felt in the silence. Every word seemed to unburden him, and Claire felt a mix of pride and sorrow watching her son navigate the difficult emotions. Ethan listened, absorbing the weight of Daniel's words, a visible shame and responsibility crossing his face. Could a child's honesty finally reach a parent's heart? The conversation deepened. Ethan admitted the gaps he had created, his emotional distance, and the subtle ways he had neglected the family's needs. He didn't offer excuses, only explanations, acknowledging the hurt he had caused. Claire found herself listening with empathy, her own anger softened by the vulnerability he displayed. Would his vulnerability be enough to rebuild trust? The afternoon wore on. Laughter mingled with tears as the family began to reconnect. Small gestures, a shared glance, a reassuring touch, signaled the start of healing. Claire noticed Ethan's efforts to listen without defensiveness, Daniel's tentative but hopeful engagement, and the visitors' subtle guidance encouraging them to validate each other's feelings. Could small steps lead to real transformation? As evening fell, the visitor quietly excused themselves, leaving the family alone to reflect on the day. The room felt different now, lighter yet charged with emotion. Claire looked at Ethan, seeing a man willing to face the consequences of his actions, not just for himself but for their shared future. Daniel, leaning slightly closer to her, radiated the strength and understanding he had gained through these trials. Was this the moment their lives could finally turn a corner? Dinner was a quiet affair, but it carried an air of reconciliation. Words were fewer, but glances, nods, and small gestures conveyed the shifting dynamics. Ethan reached out, brushing a lock of hair from Claire's face, an unspoken apology, a tentative sign of reconnection. Daniel smiled, sensing a balance slowly returning, the tension that had dominated the house finally loosening. Could a family broken by secrets find unity in silence and understanding? Later that night, Claire sat on the porch, Daniel beside her. The sky was dark, but the stars were clear and bright, reflecting the sense of cautious hope she felt. "We've been through a lot," she whispered. Daniel nodded, "but we're stronger now. I think we can get through anything together." Claire smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Would tomorrow bring permanence to the changes they fought for today? Ethan stepped outside, standing slightly apart, watching them. His expression was contemplative, torn between pride and regret. He took a deep breath and joined them, closing the small distance with a careful but deliberate step. For the first time, the three of them, mother, father, and son, stood together, acknowledging the past, yet looking toward a future where communication and honesty could guide their path. Could one evening of truth redefine an entire family? As they sat in the quiet night, the sense of fragility remained. Healing takes time, but the air of despair that had lingered for months was gone. The house felt alive again, not perfect, but real. Claire's thoughts wandered to the days ahead, wondering what challenges might test their newfound understanding. Just as the night settled into calm, a phone buzzed in the distance. The screen flashed a message from an unexpected number, one that threatened to challenge the fragile peace they had just begun to build.